I want you to just take a second and look at your smartphone. Or, maybe the laptop you're working on right now. Just stare at it for a moment.
Yeah, really look at it.
Right. Now, I want you to imagine trying to do your job today completely without it. Like, no email, no instant messages, definitely no virtual meetings. Just you, maybe a yellow notepad and a landline sitting on a desk.
It feels almost impossible, doesn't it?
It really does, because when you step back and look at a typical workday, you have to ask how much of it is actually doing the core work and how much is just, well, managing the tools of our work.
Yeah.
The pings, the inboxes, the endless notifications.
It is a staggering amount of time.
Right.
And the danger here is that it creates this really profound illusion. We look at a phone or a computer and we tell ourselves, oh, this is just a tool. It's just a neutral piece of glass and plastic.
Exactly. We think we're totally in charge of it.
Right. But the reality of how humans and technology interact is it's far more complex than that.
Yeah.
It is deeply, entirely rooted in our social behaviors. It is honestly never just a tool.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today, we are pulling from Catherine Miller's comprehensive text, Organizational Communication, Approaches and Processes.
It's such a great foundational source for this.
It really is. And we're going to figure out what it truly means for our communication to become technologized. We'll explore how we adopt these tools, why the tools actually don't entirely control us, even though it definitely feels like they do sometimes, and the hidden paradoxes these technologies create for our personal well-being and, our organizational lives.
It's an essential conversation to have right now. Because it is incredibly easy and honestly quite common to just blame the technology for all our stress.
Oh, yeah. Like, my inbox is ruining my life.
Exactly. We say the inbox is the enemy or the messaging app is ruining our focus. But if we really want to understand the modern workplace, we have to look at the human systems that give that technology its power in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we have to start by defining what makes technological communication fundamentally different from traditional communication.
Right. What are the actual features that change the game?
Yeah. Obviously, the first thing everyone thinks of is speed. Like 100 years ago, to send a contract across the country, you were heavily relying on the mail system. Now it's a PDF sent in a fraction of a second. But the research says it's not just about doing things faster, right?
No, not at all. Speed is just the surface layer. What information and communication technology, or ICT, what it actually does is fundamentally alter space and time.
Space and time. Sounds like sci-fi.
It kind of is. It spans global distances instantly.
Sure.
But critically, it is often asynchronous.
Meaning we aren't talking at the same time?
Exactly. We are communicating at entirely different times. You send an email at 9 a.m., the receiver reads it at 4 p.m. You aren't sharing a moment in time anymore.
Which completely shifts the dynamic of human connection. You lose that immediate feedback loop. It's like a Swiss Army knife that occasionally texts your boss at 2 a.m. It's not just a faster version of a letter. It changes the very nature of how we connect.
That's a great way to put it, because ICTs systematically filter out critical social cues.
Right.
Think about a face-to-face meeting or even just a voice call. We rely so heavily on tone of voice or facial expressions, body posture, to convey meaning.
And in an email, all of that is just gone.
Poof. All those crucial cues vanish. We are left with just the bare text. And what's fascinating is observing how humans instinctively try to compensate for that loss.
Oh, like emojis.
Yes, we invent entirely new codes, emoticons, emojis, very specific and sometimes passive-aggressive punctuation styles, like the dreaded period at the end of a text.
Oh man, a text with a period is terrifying.
Right. All of these are just desperate attempts to inject the missing social nuance back into a cold, text-based medium.
We're basically trying to manually type out our body language.
That is exactly what we're doing.
And the other massive shift here is memory. Like, if you and I have a casual conversation in the hallway about a project, it exists only in our heads. It fades over time.
Yeah, it's transient.
But if we have that exact same conversation on a corporate messaging app, it is stored. The internet is forever. These tools alter memory and storage, fundamentally changing how we track, retrieve, and honestly, potentially weaponize information against each other later on.
Which brings up profound issues of privacy and surveillance that simply didn't exist in the traditional office environment a century ago.
Right. So looking at all these features, the speed, the distance, the lack of cues, the permanence of the record, I actually have to push back on something you said earlier.
Okay, let's hear it.
You said it's not just the technology controlling us, but given how powerful these features are, aren't we just at the mercy of the algorithms and the tech? Like, does the technology itself determine our workplace culture?
What's fascinating here is that this is a very common assumption, and it leads us right into what scholars call the trap of technological determinism.
Technological determinism.
Yes, this is the belief that the technology itself dictates our behavior and determines the outcome of our organizations. And it's an idea that generally splits people into two very extreme camps.
Oh, I feel like I know these camps. You've got the people who want to put a microchip in everything, and then the people who want to like throw all the servers into the ocean.
Haha, this is a very colorful way to put it. But essentially, yes. You have the utopians. They believe technology will inevitably solve every organizational problem.
Right, the tech bros.
Yeah, they think it will naturally increase productivity, free workers from mundane tasks, and democratize the workplace by giving everyone a voice.
And the other side.
On the other extreme, you have the Luddites. They look at the exact same technology and see an inevitable dystopia. They see the automation of jobs, the de-skilling of human labor, and a tightly controlled work environment where everyone is constantly monitored by machines.
But both of those camps, whether they are hoping for a utopia or terrified of a dystopia, they actually share the exact same underlying premise. They both believe that the technology is the one driving the car.
Precisely. But the research thoroughly rejects pure technological determinism. Scholars like Poole and DeSanctis argue forcefully that technologies do not determine particular outcomes on their own.
So the tool itself is neutral in outcome.
Right. A new computer system doesn't inherently make a workplace better or worse. Instead, the effects depend entirely on how a tool is appropriated or used by the humans involved.
Appropriated, meaning the specific messy ways we actually choose to use it in our daily lives.
Yes. Think about it this way. A smartphone is just a piece of glass, metal, and code. It can be a leash that ties you to the office 24/7, destroying your weekend because your boss demands instant replies.
That's the worst.
Or it can be a tool of ultimate freedom, allowing you to leave the office at noon and work from a coffee shop in Paris instead of a cubicle in Chicago. The technology doesn't decide its own outcome. We do.
Which brings up a huge mystery for me.
What's that?
Well, if the technology isn't forcing our hand, how do we actually decide which tools to use and when? Because we all know people who use these tools in incredibly frustrating ways. Like, why do some managers fire people over an email?
It happens way too often.
It's crazy. Did early researchers just think we were bad at math or something? Like we were trying to calculate the optimal way to send a message and just failing?
That was exactly the early thinking, actually.
Mm.
The prevailing theory for a long time was the rational view. We assumed people act like perfect, rational robots.
Okay, I already love how wrong this sounds.
It really is. The most famous example of this is Daft and Lengel's media richness model. The premise here is that humans logically match the ambiguity of a task to the richness of a communication medium.
Okay, wait. Break down ambiguity and richness for me.
Sure. So media can be placed on a spectrum from rich to lean. Face-to-face communication is very rich. It gives you immediate feedback, multiple social cues, and intense personal focus.
Got it. And a lean medium.
A mass-printed flyer put in everyone's physical mailbox is very lean. There is no immediate feedback, no personal focus, and zero nonverbal cues.
Okay, and ambiguity.
Ambiguity refers to how easily misunderstood a message might be, or how emotionally complex it is.
So the theory assumes I'm essentially doing like an internal calculus problem before I communicate. If a task is highly ambiguous like firing someone, which is complex and deeply emotional, I should logically select a rich medium, like a face-to-face meeting.
That's the model.
Mm.
And if the task is unambiguous, like reminding everyone the timesheets are due on Friday, use a lean medium, the quick email. The model argues that communication failures happen when there's a mismatch.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you fire someone via a lean medium, like a one-line email, it's an absolute disaster. It's totally insulting.
Definitely.
But conversely, if you schedule an hour-long mandatory face-to-face meeting just to tell 20 people that timesheets are due, people are going to resent you for wasting their time with a Davy glut.
Exactly. It causes frustration on both ends. But as logical as that sounds on paper, later researchers quickly realized it was fundamentally flawed in practice.
Because humans are not rational robots. We do irrational things all the time. We don't sit there matching ambiguity and richness on a little internal chart.
We really don't. And that realization led to theories like channel expansion, which points out that an individual's personal experience with a medium changes how rich they find it.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, like a teenager might find a text message incredibly rich with emotional meaning, while their grandparent finds that exact same text baffling and completely lean.
And it completely ignores the symbolic weight of how we communicate. The source material mentions an argument by Coleman regarding handwritten thank you notes, which I absolutely love.
It's a perfect example.
Writing a physical thank you note takes vastly more time and effort than sending an email. It costs more in terms of human energy. So you aren't choosing a handwritten note because it's the most efficient way to transmit the data of the words thank you.
No, you're choosing it because the medium is the message. The effort itself sends a message of care and respect. This is known as the dual capacity model. Every medium has a data carrying capacity, but it also has a symbol carrying capacity.
Right.
But the theory that truly dismantled the rational human idea is Folk's social information processing model.
Social information processing. I feel like we could just rebrand this as technological peer pressure.
That is a very accurate rebrand.
Because honestly, I want to ask you, the listener, to think about the software your team uses right now. Do you actually like it? Did you rationally choose it because it perfectly matched your task's ambiguity?
Probably not.
Or do you just tolerate it because the person in the cubicle next to you sighed heavily and said, look, this is just how we do things here?
It is entirely about technological peer pressure. The social information processing model argues that our use of a communication technology is deeply, almost entirely affected by the people around us.
So it's mostly social.
Yes. If everyone in your department constantly complains that the new project management software is clunky and useless, you're going to view it as clunky and useless regardless of its actual objective features. Your perception is shaped by the social environment, not the tool itself.
That makes infinitely more sense to me than the media richness model. It explains why some offices live entirely on a specific messaging app and other offices doing the exact same type of work refuse to ever touch it.
Exactly.
And the source text highlights a specific study by Stevens and Davis that proves this, right? The one about doodling in the age of technology.
Yes, the study on electronic multitasking during meetings. Staring intently at your laptop while someone is presenting, pretending to take notes but actually answering emails.
We've all done it.
We have. And the logical assumption would be that people do this because of communication overload. They are so swamped with work that they literally have to multitask just to survive the day.
But the data showed something completely different.
It did. An individual's actual workload or level of communication overload did not predict their multitasking. The strongest predictors were entirely social.
Wait, really? It wasn't about how busy they were.
Nope. It was simply observing other people in the meeting doing it. If you see your peers doing it, and you believe that electronic multitasking is the accepted social norm of that specific organization, you will do it too. Tech adoption and use is highly contagious.
Wow.
The tool, the laptop or the phone, is just the instrument we use to perform a social norm.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if we adopt these tools through social contagion, what happens to the organization and to our own mental health? Once we are all fully plugged into this always-on matrix, what are the unintended consequences of this peer pressure?
The first consequence is the sheer volume of information. We often feel like we are drowning in data, and there's a specific reason for that.
The data glut.
Yes. These new technologies rarely replace old forms of communication. They just augment them. You still have the same number of meetings, but now you also have 1,000 emails and instant messages piled on top of them. The overall amount of communication skyrockets, creating an incredible cognitive load.
And it's not just internal office memos piling up. The source text talks about the double-edged sword of social media acting as an amplifier.
It is a massive amplifier. On one hand, social media is used brilliantly for organizing social justice movements globally, allowing grassroots campaigns to mobilize instantly.
Which is incredible.
It is, but on the corporate side, it's a tool for public relations and crisis management. The text cites a famous incident where a Domino's pizza employee posted a disgusting hoax video on YouTube showing food tampering.
Oh, I remember that vividly. It went incredibly viral. It was an absolute existential threat to their brand.
It was huge. And what's fascinating is how Domino's had to respond. They couldn't just issue a traditional press release. They had to use the exact same technologized environment, Twitter, YouTube, corporate blogging, to fight the hoax, reassure the public, and restore their consumer confidence.
Fight fire with fire.
Exactly. They had to meet the crisis in the medium where it lived. But that same digital landscape is also a massive, constant distraction for the workforce. It entirely blurs the line between public and private, professional and personal.
Which perfectly transitions us to the biggest blur of all, telework and virtual organizing. The shift away from the central brick-and-mortar office to distributed remote work, We've talked about the utopians who love this and the Luddites who fear it, but what actually happens to our brains and our organizations when we attempt to work from anywhere?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at Perlson and Saunders' three paradoxes of telework. They brilliantly capture why remote work often feels so exhausting.
Okay, let's hear them.
Paradox number one, increased flexibility versus increased structure.
Wait, if I'm flexible, I shouldn't be structured. That's the whole point of working from home. I can work in my pajamas on the couch.
That is the promise, yes. But consider the reality from management's perspective. Because the manager can no longer physically see you sitting at a desk, the trust dynamic shifts entirely.
Oh, they get paranoid.
Precisely. To compensate for that lack of physical oversight, organizations often implement hyper-structured schedules, mandatory constant check-ins, and even rigorous tracking software to monitor keystrokes or screen time. So yes, you gain geographical flexibility, but you are subjected to intense, rigid, almost suffocating procedural oversight.
Oh, that makes so much sense because we lost the chance encounter in the hallway where a manager could casually see you working. We overcompensate with invasive structure. Okay, what's paradox number two?
Greater individuality versus more teamwork.
Let me synthesize this one. You are sitting completely alone in your house, which is the ultimate state of individuality. But your actual work requires you to collaborate constantly over software with a team you never physically interact with.
Yes. It creates a bizarre psychological dissonance. You are isolated, physically cut off from the tribe, yet required to coordinate heavily. You are expected to be a rugged, independent self-starter, yet perfectly aligned with a collective corporate culture you are physically removed from.
That sounds exhausting.
It is, which leads directly to the third paradox. More responsibility versus less control.
Explain the friction there, because if I have more responsibility, shouldn't I logically be the one in control?
You'd think so? As a teleworker, you become the CEO of your own home office. You have total responsibility for your physical environment, your focus, your motivation, your internet connection.
Right.
But simultaneously, managers fear losing control over the remote workforce. They treat employees with suspicion. And on the flip side, the teleworker fears a loss of control over their own career trajectory.
How so?
There's a very real documented fear that because they are out of sight, they are out of mind for promotions or leadership roles.
Oh, the dreaded presence penalty. The idea that the person who physically shows up to the office gets promoted, even if the remote worker is actually producing better results.
Exactly. And this tension isn't just theoretical. The text cites Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer's highly controversial decision back in 2013 to completely ban working from home.
Oh, wow. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, she argued that true communication and innovation required people to be working side by side in the physical office. The organization literally pulled the plug on the technology's ultimate flexibility because they felt it was destroying the collaborative culture.
And see, to me, when we look at all these paradoxes, the ultimate consequence is the creation of what I'll call the phantom office.
The phantom office, I like that.
Yeah, because before these advanced ICTs, there was a hard physical boundary to work. You commuted to the office, you did your work, you left the office. The boundary was geographical.
Clear lines.
But because of technology, that boundary has completely evaporated. You are checking emails in the car line at school drop-off. You are answering a Slack message right after your morning alarm goes off. You are free from the physical cubicle, yes. But the cubicle now lives in your pocket. The office is a phantom that haunts your personal life everywhere you go.
And that phantom office is really the crux of the modern well-being crisis. The technology simply enables an always-on environment. But the technology did not create the expectation that you should be always on. That is a human organizational expectation.
We did that to ourselves.
We did. We have taken a tool that could offer ultimate freedom, and we have socially appropriated it to be an instrument of endless, boundaryless labor.
So what does this all mean? We've covered incredible ground today. We started by looking at how technologized communication fundamentally alters space, time, and strips away our social cues, forcing us to conduct that blindfolded orchestra.
Right. And we explored the reality that we don't adopt these tools like rational robots trying to perfectly match a medium to a task's ambiguity. We adopt them through social contagion. We use them the way the people around us use them.
Right, the technological peer pressure. And while these tools offer us the incredible flexibility to work globally and remotely, they trap us in these heavy psychological paradoxes. We get flexibility, but invasive tracking. We get physical isolation, but forced teamwork. And if we aren't careful, that phantom office in our pocket will completely override our mental health.
Which brings us back to the most empowering point we discussed today. The technology itself does not determine our fate. It is merely a mirror and an amplifier of our existing human systems.
Which is an incredibly heavy thought, honestly.
It is. But it also means we have the power to change it. And this raises an important question, something I want to leave you, the listener, to really mull over as you go about your work this week.
Let's hear it.
Since we know that technology doesn't strictly determine our behavior, but rather acts as an amplifier for our existing social norms, take a hard look at the communication tools you and your team use the most. Are those tools actually solving your problems? Or are they just a digital mirror, perfectly reflecting the hidden, unwritten rules and perhaps the dysfunctions of your specific workplace culture?
That is a phenomenal question to end on. If you're stressed out, is your inbox broken or is your culture broken? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Next time you hear a ping, a buzz, or a notification from that device sitting right next to you, we hope you look at it just a little bit differently.